This video was brought to you by Ground News. Last December, Erdogan visited Budapest to mark 100 years of bilateral diplomatic relations between Turkey and Hungary. Received with military honours, the visit was Erdogan's second in several months, indicating an increasing closeness between the two countries. Despite historically being imperial foes, over the past decade or so, Orban and Erdogan have cultivated a special relationship. So special that Hungary is the only European state to be a member of the Organization of Turkic States, albeit as an observer. The most recent development in their budding friendship is a new energy deal, with Hungary becoming Turkey's first non-bordering country for gas exports. So in this video, we're going to break down why these old enemies have now become key allies in the political, economic, and ideological spheres, and consider how long their relationship could really last. Before we start, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and ringing the bell to stay in the loop and be notified when we release new videos. So, as we see it, the main basis of this bromance is the ideological overlap between Orban and Erdogan. They are both staunch social conservatives with a strong emphasis on preserving their respective national cultures. They're both also what we might describe as semi-democrats, insofar as they hold free and legitimate elections, but use authoritarian practices to mold public opinion in their favour. In fact, in 2014, Orban himself said that he wanted to turn Hungary into, quote, an illiberal state, and both Orban and Erdogan have used democratically questionable tactics, such as stuffing the judiciary with favourable judges or censoring opposition media, to give themselves the upper hand in elections. In fact, just last month, Orban actually praised Erdogan's authoritative tendencies as strong leadership, arguing that in Hungary, strong is still a positive word, unlike in the Western countries where it means something bad, just a step to Hitler. This is why Hungary and Turkey were the only NATO members to be left off the invite list for President Joe Biden's Summit for Democracy 2 years in a row. There are also some pretty glaring rhetorical similarities between the two, in that both Orban and Erdogan spent a lot of time talking about how bad the West is. In Turkish political discourse, Erdogan and other AKP politicians often frame the West as unfairly anti-Turkish or Islamophobic, and dismiss Western liberalism as a form of moral hypocrisy. Recent examples of this, cited by Erdogan, include the burning of an effigy of the Turkish president and another burning of the Quran by demonstrators in Stockholm last year. Similarly, Orban has become increasingly vocal about his animosity towards the EU, as relations have soured dramatically in recent years, and he often touches on many of the same talking points as Erdogan. Now, with these kinds of views, Orban remains pretty isolated in Europe, but Orban doesn't seem to be too fussed about this, and has continued to pursue what might be described as a Hungary-first foreign policy, maintaining commercial relations with Russia and China in spite of European pressure. Again, this is similar to Erdogan, who also pursues a sort of Turkey-first foreign policy, which often puts him at odds with his NATO allies. But while this ideological affinity might have created the potential for good relations between Hungary and Turkey, the Orban-Erdogan bromance really began in 2016, when Hungary was one of the only EU countries to support Erdogan unconditionally after the failed coup against him in 2016. Now, it's hard to overstate how important a moment this was for Turkey and Erdogan. Erdogan was appalled and upset that Western leaders responded to an attempted coup by warning him not to overreact. And the fact that leaders like Putin and Orban were his strongest supporters is a big reason why Turkey's foreign policy has tilted away from the West ever since. Hungary was also one of the few European countries to support Turkey's incursion in Syria in 2019, which Hungary said was necessary to stamp out Kurdish separatism and guarantee Turkey's territorial integrity. Orban has also been one of the loudest advocates for Turkey's EU accession. If you're not already aware, the EU hasn't been too keen on Turkey joining the bloc. And as such, Turkey has been waiting to receive EU membership for more than 50 years. And while membership talks did open in 2005, After Erdogan's post-coup crackdown in 2016, the EU ended membership talks over concerns about human rights violations and democratic backsliding. And the EU's position here is largely a reflection of popular opinion within Europe, which is staunchly opposed to Turkish membership. It's also because there's a sense in Europe's political class that integrating a big Muslim-majority country into the EU would be politically and logistically difficult. Orban, however, has staunchly backed Turkey's EU membership for a while now. Now, this may seem confusing, as Orban often portrays himself as a defender of Christian Europe and Magyar culture, and has one of the harshest stances towards immigration in the EU. Hungarians are also the most migrant-skeptic people in Europe, especially when it comes to Muslim migrants. But while this might change if Turkey actually joins the EU, for now, Orban apparently sees Turkey as a potential ally in curbing irregular migration into Europe. Since Turkey signed a migration cooperation deal with the EU in 2016, Orban has apparently been smitten with Erdogan, stating whatever anti-Turkish statements there are in important European Union countries, Hungary will never add its voice to them, and has urged EU states to restart Turkey's accession talks with the EU. More recently, Hungary also followed Turkey in blocking Sweden's NATO bid after Erdogan asked for progress on Turkey's EU accession in exchange for granting Sweden's NATO membership. In fact, Hungary's foreign minister has also said that Hungary plans on using its turn holding the EU presidency to help improve economic ties with Turkey and liberalize EU visa rules for Turkish citizens. This political bromance has also developed into an economic relationship, with the two doubling their bilateral trade turnover in the space of about a decade. And in the energy sector, huge steps are being taken, with Turkey now playing an important role in Hungary's energy security. Hungary has been searching for alternative gas sources for a while now, especially now that it's nearing the end of its gas deal with Russia and facing European pressure to diversify. As such, Turkey has emerged as a viable alternative thanks to a recent discovery by Turkish Petroleum of about 710 billion cubic meters of natural gas in the Black Sea's Sakarya field. Thanks to this, Turkey now wants to become a regional energy trading hub, being strategically located at the crossroads of oil-rich countries in the Caucasus and the Middle East, and European countries in need of oil and gas supplies. So in August, Turkey signed a deal to export natural gas to Hungary, and Hungary is due to receive as much as 275 million cubic meters of gas in the coming weeks, more than all Hungarian households use in the average month. Ultimately though, whether this bromance lasts fundamentally depends on whether the two leaders can hold on to power. Erdogan has just suffered a massive defeat in Turkey's local elections, while in Hungary, an opposition is slowly forming out of the rubble of a government corruption and sex abuse scandal, led by former lawyer Peter Magyar. So with both facing troubles at home, this friendship might not necessarily last. Now, when researching this contentious friendship, we found that it was really important to balance the different opinions on this topic. And fortunately, we were able to easily compare opinions thanks to our sponsor, Ground News, a website and app developed by a former NASA engineer on a mission to give readers an easy, data-driven, objective way to read the news. And as such, every story comes with a quick visual breakdown of the political bias, factuality, and ownership of the source's reporting, all backed by ratings from 3 independent news monitoring organizations. For example, take this story about the recent major fire in Istanbul. Right away, you can see that 326 outlets reported on it. And of these outlets, 27% lean left, while 23% lean right. And every story comes with this detailed view of not just the bias distribution, but also factuality scores and even specific ownership information. I especially like their blind spot feature too, which shows you stories underreported by either side of the political spectrum. Ground News is such a useful tool for our current media landscape, and I cannot recommend it enough. I've become much better at spotting political bias, and I've surprisingly challenged some of my own views too. In fact, if you subscribe today, you'll get 40% off their Vantage plan. That's $5 a month for unlimited access to every incredible Ground News feature. This offer is only available here, so make sure you go to ground.news/TLDR or check out the link in the description to get started and support an independent news platform working to make the media landscape more transparent.